Clare FM's In the Garden with Clonroad Garden Centre, Clonroad Business Park in the heart of Ennis. Whether you're a seasoned gardener or just starting out, our friendly staff are here to help your garden grow. Open 7 days a week, Monday to Sunday.
And I'm joined in studio by one of the members of their friendly staff. It's Judy Beck from Clonroad Garden Centre. Judy, good morning.
Good morning, Alan, and welcome back from your holidays.
Thank you. Delighted to be back. How convincing did that sound? Very good, was it? No, great to have you in. And I suppose looking a bit sunnier out now. I mean, the weather the last few days probably not gardening friendly, but there was that glorious stretch last week when I'm sure you were up the walls.
Well, yeah, we had a very hot week when you were away, and
I timed it well, is what you're saying.
Well, it was nearly too hot, and I suppose this kind of weather is probably even better for the gardens, and we need the rain, of course, to get the flowers, and I'm sure we'll get the sunshine back.
And actually you made a very good point there, because that kind of weather where it's high 20s and into the 30s, people think, it's glorious out in the back garden and all that, but that's probably not too good for the plants, and even watering them, it's not ideal to water them in such hot weather, is it?
Absolutely, and we had a challenge in the garden centre to keep everything watered and looking great, but cooled down now, and it's probably easier to work in the garden when the temperatures are a little bit cooler, and hopefully now we're into our summer, into June now, so
summer in inverted commas.
Yeah, exactly. But
more gardening friendly, and I would imagine whether that the type of plants you want to talk about this morning might appreciate more than the hotter temperatures of last week. Climbing plants is what you want to have a chat about this morning. Tell us more on why.
Well, I think these plants are underutilised by people, really. Everyone thinks about gardening on the ground and on one level, but lots of people forget about that you can grow things vertically. So you can grow them up walls, you can grow them up pergolas, trellis, and you make use of the upward space and not just your ground space, and add extra colour, and maybe even hide if you have an ugly wall, or maybe a shed you want to hide, or an oil tank, or something, maybe even just a space that you just prefer that it was covered with flowers. Then the way to go is to put in a climber, and there's so many choices that you can put in that there is a climber almost for every situation.
Okay, so plenty of choice, and we'll get to the choice in just a little bit, but maybe speak to us more about the pros of vertical gardening and why you believe people would benefit from them, from climbing plants and vertical gardening.
Yeah, and it's not just the people that benefit, of course, it's the wildlife as well, because there's lots of climbers that are really good for birds and insects, and for the wildlife with the food that they give and the shelter that they give. So apart from helping with screening and privacy, maybe you want to add a little bit of privacy into your garden if you're overlooked, and it can even give an insulation to your house. If they are covered with a plant, it helps to keep the house warm. So they have lots of benefits, and as I say, there is so many types that you can. Some don't even need a support system. There are types that do need to be supported, but there's others like ivy and climbing hydrangeas and Virginia creepers that actually have their own roots and will attach themselves onto stone or fences, onto brickwork. And as I mentioned ivy there, and ivy gets a hard rap sometimes when people they think it should be banned and all this kind of thing, but ivy has great benefits. It's really good for the bees, for example. It provides the flowers when nothing else is flowering, the ivy flowers for bees that come out of hibernation. They're really good for that, and they provide plenty of shelter for little insects to hide in behind. And ivy, of course, grows where other climbers won't grow. It'll grow in a dark corner where you can't get plants to grow otherwise. It's one of the things that will grow without any sun, and you can get lovely variegated types of ivy, not just the traditional green one. You can get ones with white going through it and yellow going through it. So definitely something to consider. And some people say it can damage a house, but actually if you have a house in good condition and the render is in good condition, ivy won't damage. It just clings onto the wall. It doesn't put its roots in behind the render. So, it's one of the ones that I would be in favour of. But of course, there's plenty of others that we could consider. And climbing roses of course, that would be quite a popular climber because people know them, I suppose, and there are climbing roses for all kinds of situations, whether you wanted to cover a big area or a smaller area. And a lot of people actually ask for, when they're talking about climbing roses, they say, I'd love to have a rambler. And then they say, well, what's the difference actually between a rambling rose and a climbing rose? And the main difference between a rambler and a climber is that a rambler gives one big flush of flowers, usually in May or June, for 2 or 3 weeks. Lots and lots of small flowers. Looks stunning. But then it's done. So you don't get any more flowers for the whole season. Whereas a climbing rose will give out bigger flowers usually, less of them, but will repeat flower over the summer. So you'll keep getting flowers coming throughout the whole summer. Climbers also generally aren't as big as ramblers. Ramblers can grow enormous. They don't need any support system. They're more of a spreader. They'll just sprawl everywhere. Great if you have a big shed or a massive wall that you want to cover or something to hide. But you need a big garden for a rambler, whereas climbers, you can get smaller climbing roses and you can put them into a relatively small garden.
Okay, any other types that you want to highlight? Or?
Well, clematis would be the queen of climbers. There's so many different varieties, hundreds of varieties of clematis, from small flowered ones to big flowered ones, to evergreen, to winter flowering ones, even scented clematis, or clematis as some people say, and that would be the most popular probably of all the climbers that we sell for really good reason. I absolutely love them myself. Honeysuckle, a lot of them have a gorgeous scent, really good for pollinators, and will go in sun and partial shade. And then climbing hydrangea, really nice summer flowering clematis that will grow in shade on north and east facing walls. And climbing hydrangea loves a wet soil, loves our climate, loves that where there's plenty of water, so it does really well. And one of the biggest benefits of it is that it does give flowers on a wall that doesn't get much sun. But the others, just to mention a couple of annual climbers, so sweet pea. Again, sweet pea likes a cool, damp conditions and grows very well in the west of Ireland. Lovely sweet pea with the lovely scent. And Thunbergia, black-eyed Susan, less well known, but an annual climber as well. Gorgeous, really nice. You have to plant it every year. It's not hardy, but really well worth trying if you want an annual climber.
Okay, lots of options there, but of course, whatever option you pick, you have to be aware of how to look after it. So what kind of planting and care tips would you suggest, Judy?
So we were just talking there about the support system. So most of them do need something to cling on to. So whether you put wires up against the wall, or you can use pergolas or arches, trellis, any of those systems for climbing. So clematis, for example, puts out tendrils and needs something to cling onto, and also roses, they need something. Climbing roses need something to be tied onto, and wires are best for those. Other varieties such as hydrangea, climbing hydrangea and ivy, they'll cling on themselves, so they don't need any support system. When you're planting it, make sure you plant it well out from a wall, because the wall will not only will it probably have a foundation, so there'll be no soil there, but also that it's often quite dry around the wall. So if you can plant it 30 to 40 centimetres, about a foot away from the wall when you're planting it in, and of course give lots of rich organic matter. Now, of course, you can put some climbers into pots, but then climbers are very hard to move from one pot to another. So you need to start with a big pot with good drainage. And of course, if they are in pots, they will need feeding as well.
Okay, so some good tips there. It is 086 1800 964 before we get to the questions, and plenty of them coming in. Remember, there is a voucher, €25 voucher for the Clonroad Garden Centre to be won. So get your questions in for Judy to that number, 086 1800 964. Before we get to them, any jobs for our gardeners for the week ahead, or are you letting them off?
I suppose just to remember to keep feeding your plants. So if you've got hanging baskets and window boxes, make sure that you're feeding and watering at this time of year. Hanging baskets do need plenty of watering, and even if it's raining, it's not enough for them. So just keep on top of that, and deadheading as well. Just to keep your flowers going. When you have your summer flowers in, they need a little bit of help to keep going the whole season, and by that I mean feeding them with tomato food, deadheading them, and of course watering.
Okay, let's get on to the listeners' questions. First up for Judy is a question from Martin. Good morning to you, Martin, who is asking, is it possible to take cuttings from an Eleagnus bush this time of year, and what's the best way to do so?
Yes, so you can do cuttings from the new growth of Eleagnus at this time of year. So take off some, when you do your cutting, take off some of the leaves. Make sure you have rooting powder. That will really help. And use good gritty compost to put in pots. And you can do like 5 or 7 cuttings per pot. And by the springtime, they should have rooted and be ready to plant out for next year.
Okay, thank you for your question, Martin. Next up is a question from Mary, who's listening in Kilkee. Good morning to you, Mary, who says, hi, Alan and Judy. I have osteopermums in large pots from last year that are flowering again, but they've gotten very leggy. Can I prune them now? And if so, will they continue to flower?
No, now would be the wrong time to prune them. So I'd wait till it's all finished, and you can prune them later in the year when the flowering is done. And I wouldn't touch them at the moment, because you'll lose the flowers for this year if you do.
Okay, there you go, Mary. We go from Mary in Kilkee to another listener in Kilkee, and that is Eddie, who says, good morning. I have a question about what size pot, width and depth should I put a standard sunflower sapling into to give the plant a good chance? That wonders Eddie.
Hi, good morning, Eddie. So if you're going to leave it in a pot for the whole summer, it's best not to put it into its final pot at the moment. If it's only a little plant, you're better off to pot it on into like a 12 cm pot, and wait till it gets good and strong before you put it into its final pot. So if it's only, when you say sapling, I'm not sure if you just mean a seedling, that it's really quite small. So it sounds like it might be too small to put into its final pot. So just pot it on into something bigger, and then when it's strong enough, put it into its final pot.
Okay, and best of luck with that, Eddie. One here from Adrian, who is listening to Morning Focus and in the garden in Crusheen. How are you, Adrian? He says, hi guys, I have a small apple tree in my garden. Last year the birds ate all the apples within 2 days. Hungry, huh? So I've put a net over it, but it looks like it is smothering the branches. Is it too early for the net? Help please, says Adrian.
Hi, Adrian. Well, the birds probably won't go after the apples till they're ripe. A bit like us, they kind of like the sweet fruit. So I would say it probably is too early. Now, the one thing when you're going to net a tree, now it's good that it's a small apple tree, so it is possible to net, but make sure it is quite taut, because you don't want to come out to see a bird caught in a net one morning, which isn't pleasant for the bird or pleasant for you to see that happen. So it's important that the net is actually not kept loose over any fruit bush or over an apple tree. But I'd say it's a bit early. Let the tree do what it needs to do, and then later, maybe in August, to net it.
Okay, and best of luck with that, Adrian. Aisling is in West Clare, says, good morning, Alan and Judy. Can I ask Judy, what are the best flowers and plants to pot? It's for a grave and it's high up beside the sea and quite windy. Would there be something, Judy, that you could recommend that would last? Thank you, guys, says Aisling.
Hi, Aisling. Graves tend to be cold, windy places, but you have the additional problem of it being beside the sea as well, just an extra challenge for planting. Now, for the summer, usually it's you usually get away with more in the summer, because we just don't get the same cold winds usually. So what I would say is maybe get flowers that are low down, like something like violas, or the bedding begonias are pretty tough. Marigolds, though, you have to watch them with the slugs, because the slugs love marigolds. And busy lizzies, that's another good one, especially if it's a shady corner, because busy lizzies do well in shade. But my advice would be to go for something that's not too high growing. One thing actually I didn't mention, geraniums do very well by the sea. They are a little bit higher growing, but the salt wind doesn't seem to affect them. And also the good thing about geraniums for graveyards is if you're not up at the grave very often for watering, they're very drought tolerant. So that's usually pretty important to people who are putting flowers on graves. So geraniums might work for you as well.
Okay, Ger in Shannon is asking whether it is a good time to transfer rhododendron from one pot to a bigger one, and is compost okay?
Jared, that's a good question. So if your rhododendron is finished flowering, which it may or may not have, depending on the variety, but they're usually flowering in May, so it may have finished. And if it has, yes, it would be a good time. Rhododendrons grow into very big plants, so you do need to put it into a very big pot. And yes, you can use compost, but make sure that it's ericaceous compost. Ericaceous compost is lime-free compost. And if you use multi-purpose, the leaves will go yellow. So ericaceous compost. And of course, remember to feed your rhododendron, especially in a pot. As I say, they do get really big. But just make sure to use the right compost.
Okay, and our final question this morning is animal related. It comes in from Tess, who's listening in Ennis, who says, "Good morning, Alan and Judy. How can I stop my cats from digging up my garden? Thank you and great show." So they're her cats, so I presume she's looking for a humane solution.
Of course, and we would
I wouldn't
only
suggest
recommend
any other ones.
humane solutions. And actually, when you were away, we were talking about this a little bit about cats coming into gardens, and I was saying that, and it seems to be kind of working. I'm using coffee grinds at the moment because I love cats. I don't have any, but I do have cats visiting the garden, and so what we're using at the moment in our house is coffee grinds, and I think it's helping. So it can be. I know. You see, the reason cats do that is because of the fresh compost. So when you're putting in fresh flowers, you're using usually fresh soil, and then it becomes a bit like a litter tray to them, and they're attracted to that. So the less you weed, the less cats you'll get. But that's, for gardeners like us, that's not usually. We like to weed and we like to have a nice clean garden with lovely flowers. So now putting prickly things around the base tends to keep them away. So if you have like holly bushes or that, you could put a little bit around, nothing that's going to hurt them. Also, they don't like strong smelling plants like thyme and rosemary. So that I've had limited success with that. But for me, it seems at the moment, anyway, coffee grinds are working. The other thing as well, of course, is if you have any if you have that black mipex, that weed block, and you put stones down, they don't like that. They don't like the stones, so they tend to stay away. Unfortunately, they seem to be a bit attracted to bark, and wood mulch is a bit like a litter tray to them as well. So if any the readers or listeners, have any suggestions, maybe they'd send them in to us.
Yeah, if you have tried anything out there, do let us know, particularly if it's worked. Although, as Judy suggests, the coffee grinds seems to be a good way to go. I must try that. I have a cat and a dog, and the cat, no issue. But my dog likes to jump into the flower beds and dig up the flowers, which is really annoying because they've only recently been put down. So I must try the coffee grinds and see.
Yeah, I have a little Jack Russell.
God knows I drink enough coffee, Judy, that I've plenty of
might be used.
Plenty of grinds to go around.
Perfect.
I'll give that a go and see if it works with the canines. The €25 voucher for Clonroad Garden Centre. Well done to Mary in Kilkee. You got advice on your osteopermums, and you now have a voucher should you want to purchase more or something else from the Clonroad Garden Centre. From said garden centre, Judy Beck. Judy, thank you as always.
Thank you, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah, see you next week on your regular day of Monday when things return to some semblance of normality. Thank you for being with us.